So Senza Sosta is a clothing brand based out of Sydney, Australia. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be donating $1 of every sale to a different charity. This is called the Senza Sosta Project. Today we've got Tim. So Tim, I will just let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and about your charity.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And let me start by saying thank you for the invitation.
No, thanks you so much.
Thanks for the very generous offer and donations that Senza Sosta are obviously going to make to charities going forward. Mate, well done.
Thank you very much.
Well
Thanks
done.
for being here.
Yeah, this is exciting. It's a place I'm familiar with, right?
Yeah.
So I come here and get my haircut. I love it. I love it.
You've been here once or twice.
Yeah. So mongrelsmen. So we're essentially a men's mental health charity. We're only new, right? We're pretty young in the big scheme of things. We're only a couple of years old. Started in mid-2021, and our goal is to improve the mental and physical health and well-being of men. And we use conversation, connection, community, and movement as the 4 pillars that we operate under. What does that mean? Well, it means that we essentially run a series of events and activities designed to get blokes, outdoors, off the couch, moving, connecting, forming new social and support connections with other blokes within their local communities, and creating those support networks so that they're there when they need them.
That's awesome. And I'm going to touch on this in a second, but I think especially for men, it's a lot harder. And this is I'm just going to read some stats out to you quickly, which I find very scary. So 75% of suicides from men.
Yep.
Approximately 27.5% of men find it harder to get help than the 40% of women that actually get help, which suggests that men don't actually know how or maybe even why they want to get help. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the stats are part of the reason why I'm doing this. So, I've had my own challenges with mental health, anxiety, panic attacks, depression over the years, and had to get help for that. And I had been, reaching out to women to get help and counsel through some of my difficult times, in addition to getting professional help. And I'd started to kind of look at developing community-based initiatives, just getting blokes together, rounds of golf and have a kick of soccer and that kind of stuff. But around that same time that I was doing all of this, I started to read into the stats, and there's 9 suicides a day on average in Australia, and 7 of them are men. You talked about men not getting help. 70% of them don't get professional help when they need it. 30% of us have no social connections of our own, and the mental health crisis more broadly, and I use the word crisis because it's pretty bad. 50% of us will have a mental health challenge at some point in our lifetime. 1 in 6 of us think about taking our own lives in our lifetime. And even more recently, things like social isolation and loneliness, which can have some pretty detrimental health impacts, not just mentally but physically as well. There's now a global consortium, there's ministers being appointed to try and tackle the kind of loneliness and social isolation epidemic. So all of these things kind of culminate to formulate what is a bloody great big challenge, right, for us all. So, if we can do something through Mongrels and what we do, even at the local and community level, definitely, this is kind of why I do it, because the numbers are so 100%. Bad.
It's and I think me not looking into it until recently, I've looked at it and gone, oh my God, this is numbers that 75% in anything is high. And the fact that it's suicide, especially for men, is really eye-opening. And I think one thing you touched on before was community. I think that's, now I don't know too much about this, but there's I think it's a Netflix series or it's a Netflix movie about, I think it's called The Blue Zone. Have you ever heard of it?
It's awesome. I've watched it.
Have you watched it? I haven't actually even watched it. I think I should watch it, but maybe you can give it a little bit more insight. But they talk about, I think it's the Italian and the Japanese, the reason they live so long and they are so healthy is they have a huge sense of community. And I think that being I'm obviously a barber, but being in a barbershop with another 7 guys, but then I also have another 10 to 15, maybe 20 guys in my chair every day.
Yeah.
It makes me really struggle to have a bad day almost, because everything's so social. Everything, we're always talking. And being a barber, I didn't realize that how kind of, what's the word for it? Almost insecure guys are about different things. And if you can go, fuck man, look how good you look at the at the end of your haircut, he's gonna walk out of there because he's never been told that.
Yeah. I'll touch on the blue zone stuff first, because then I want to come back to something you've just talked about the role you play as a barber. The blue zone stuff focuses on a study of centenarians, people that live beyond 100, right? So there's blue zones they've identified all over the world. And what they were looking for was common traits. Community was one of them. Obviously, some degree of movement, some degree of purpose.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the Japanese concept of igaki, which is it's that puzzle of life, right? So here are all the pieces that you need to have a full life, and that they're all part of it. Mate, I'd recommend you watch it. It's pretty cool. And community is a massive, massive part of it, and common through all of the different areas in the world. You just touched on the role of being a barber. I actually think you guys are in the best spot ever for lots of reasons, and I'll talk about my experience in coming to Sonda, because there's a couple of things that you guys do unknowingly that I think are really cool for guys. Guy walks in, he's here to get a haircut. It's all about the way it looks on the outside, but the conversations that you guys have are what's happening on the inside. You stare at yourself in the mirror while you go through this transformational process, right? Of getting your hair cut and looking better, but at the same time you're having a conversation. But probably one of the most powerful things you guys do, and I don't know whether you do it intentionally or not, I've talked to a few people about this, is the chair turn. Where occasionally the barbers turn the chairs into the middle, and the barbers kind of start talking, and
we
some
get
of the clients start talking,
and
then all of a sudden there's a conversation happening. There's some cool tunes on in the background, maybe some basketball, but there's a connection between the blokes, and you see it, right? They're kind of eyeballing each other in the reflections in the mirror, and then once their chairs turn, there's nowhere to hide.
Exactly.
And it's pretty powerful.
And then you just end up having a 5-way conversation or a 6-way conversation, whatever it is. I don't know. We definitely, I think we don't do it if it's not, we don't force it, but if one customer says something to Ron's customer, if my customer says something to Ron's customer, or we just spin around, we just have having a chat.
That's connection, right? And they're blokes that might run into each other in the street.
Exactly.
They might recognise each other, and it's pretty powerful. Definitely.
I think for the barbershop, and I guess this is probably a little bit more interesting, because when you talk about the chair spin, the barbershop is kind of the one place where guys can come in, take 30-40 minutes out of their day and not have to worry about anything, and they can just have boy chat. And I think it's not only is it important, but I don't think we're doing it enough out there. I know for a fact that if I'm going to talk to my mates out there, I'm not really having the same kind of talk in here. And man, I've been told some insane stuff in the barbershop chair, but I just don't think that that's happening as much out there. And I think one thing for me is I've been able to connect a lot with people inside the chair, but then as soon as I'm out there, I go, I'll walk past someone and I'll have a chat, and it'll be very shallow. Whereas in here, it can get a bit deeper. And I think one thing that I want to work on is getting out there, and when I do run into someone, having almost a similar conversation as what I'm having in here, because people have messaged me later and said, thank you so much for talking to me about my home life, and I think again this just comes back to the sense of community that I don't think we're doing enough of.
It's really hard. Like, if I could tell you why blokes find it really hard to connect and communicate and have deep and meaningful conversations, like that'd solve a lot of challenges for us. So, we at Mongrels try and create an environment where guys can come and they do some exercise, and the exercise is, there's an obvious connection between physical activity and improved mental health, but it also gives the guys shit to do. And, you know, if they're walking or running, they're kind of shoulder to shoulder and side by side. They're not having to eyeball one another. So, you know, a few hundred years ago, mate, that meant we were going to war.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that creates an environment where they can obviously then have a conversation, open up a little bit. But, you know, for some it takes time, and you've got to build rapport and trust. But there's also lots of other things going on there, right? Like there's this... all the feel-good chemicals that are generated by doing movement and exercise too. So serotonin helps, you know, with mood and sleep and, you know, sort of de-stress. You know, then it generates all the endorphins, and that, you know, makes you feel good. It makes you open up a little bit. I've got as you know, I've got a teenage son. Plays footy. If I ever want to have a conversation with him, I pick him up after training. The endorphins are pumping through his system after running around for 2 hours. That's a really good point. And he'll chat.
That's a really good point.
He'll just open up. But that stat that I mentioned before, the 70% of blokes that don't get professional help, you know, that's all about opening up. That's all about confronting what's going on inside. And in part, it's probably not being able to articulate. So if we, through Mongrels, can create that environment, you know, the ability for guys to connect and then have conversations, you know, that's part way to helping us achieve some of those challenges. But, you know, that's our meetup program. We've now got 13 locations, 16 volunteers, and we run 800 of those a year. And then the other thing we do is what we call doghouse events. So, you know, previously a place of exile, you know, shame, you know, it's meant to be a place of safety, if you want to call it that, but come along, learn, get informed, so you've got information to add to the toolkit. You know, gut health, the importance of sleep, exercise, how to overcome burnout, all that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then the other programs that we run are mental health response. So that's teaching them to identify signs and symptoms, what to do if somebody's experiencing mental health challenges, you know, how to tackle the conversation suicide, but then dig into more meaningful conversations. So, you know, they're kind of the three core programs that we run.
Awesome.
And ultimately, it's all about trying to get guys together to connect and talk more.
Definitely.
And make those conversations more meaningful.
That's awesome. That's really good. I didn't know about that, and you're a fucking busy man. Okay, so moving on quickly. So you just mentioned you have two sons and a daughter, is that correct?
Yep.
Two of which are being boys, obviously. So what tools have you given them to combat these issues that we just talked about? And what would you tell other parents that are kind of maybe not knowing what to do if their son maybe is feeling a certain way or not having anything to kind of run off? What kind of information would you give them? Yeah,
look, it depends on how receptive they are to having a conversation. I've always promoted open and honest conversations with the kids, maybe sometimes a little bit too open and honest, right? But you know, they're now teenagers and they're using those tools to push back when they want to, but also ask the right questions. I think just communicating with kids is probably the key. And look, all relationships are different for different reasons. I've always been very open with them about the challenges I've had, you know, my motivations behind what we do with Mongrels. I've tried to get them involved so they can see it. You know, watch and observe me talking with other blokes, you know, how they connect. And so they can absorb then what's happening, and they see then what's happening through that kind of process of osmosis. I think kids are a little bit luckier than my generation, because conversations and education around mental health is much more frequent. There's a lot of really good school programs, you know, a lot more counsellors. The counsellors are incredibly well trained, and so they are already surrounded by resources. They've got their friends, and if they're not talking to them, there's obviously school counsellors. If not talking to them, there's obviously parents, and probably the best place to start. But if all else fails, it's encouraging them to get professional support, and ultimately, if they want to do that, great. If they don't, then that's when it becomes a challenge. That's some good points. I think that, like, I've got a younger brother. He's 10 years younger than me.
I think the boys used to play together. And I think that one thing that I struggle with is like knowing when to, I guess, push on him if he's, you know, if he's feeling a certain way, and when to like pull back, because you don't want to keep pushing them until they say, you know, you don't want to say, oh, like what's going on until they maybe feel uncomfortable talking to you. And that's a really good point as well, that you know, being there enough, but also not pushing them over the line and saying,
yeah, it's hard. Trying to get that balance is really hard. But if you're asking the question, if you're checking in, you know, he'll know that you're there to support. And for you, it's being able to identify, is he just having a bad day?
Yeah.
You know, is he having a bad couple of days? Because if you think about, so you know, very loosely, you know, mental health practitioners look at more than 80% of the day for 2 weeks or more, then there's a mental health challenge, right? Like it's not just having a bad day or a couple of bad days.
Yeah.
It's
80%.
You know, 80% or more of the day, every day for 2 weeks or more. And that's just a guide, right?
Yeah.
For something to go, something's not right, like behaviour's changed. And then if they're not receptive to conversations, you know, you don't have to go and talk to a psychologist. You can jump on the phone, you can text, you can email, you can get into forums, it can remain anonymous. So there's a whole range of different ways now people can engage to get support. You know, there's lots of good resources locally on the northern beaches, but you know, Lifeline developed a text service last year, mainly because they wanted to overcome that challenge of people not wanting to get on the phone or not being able to verbalise or so, you know, there's a raft of different options.
That's awesome. I didn't know about them. That's really good. Moving on quickly. So yeah, I'll just touch on myself quickly. But I've only been a barber for 2 years. But I guess before that, I was working in retail, only working 3 days a week, and we kind of touched on this, but I'll just go over it again. I think as soon as I started working here, especially. Being so busy that I didn't really have anything to really worry about, but also it gave me a sense of purpose, and we touched on this before, but moving towards a goal and having purpose really kind of made me feel like, again, I couldn't have a bad day. I think, like I said before, I didn't have anything exciting to go towards. I was working in retail, just doing the same stuff, only 3 days a week, and the other days I just kind of do nothing. And I think one thing for me is, and we actually talk about it in the shop a lot, is having a goal or having goals and then striving towards those goals. Maybe it might be a goal that you might not get to in kind of 10 years, but having something to work towards, having purpose is for me was the most important thing that kind of made me overcome any sense of depression or anxiety that I had. And don't get me wrong, it's, you know, being a barber and trying to start a clothing brand, trying to do all these other things.
Busy,
it's been,
right?
Yeah, it's been really hard, but I wouldn't trade that for going back to feeling depressed and not having a sense of purpose, a sense of urgency, a sense of like moving towards a goal.
It's a great motivator, right?
Yeah, it's a great motivator. But what kind of issues have you faced, and how have you gotten over them?
Yeah, so it's a long story, but I'm going to kind of break it down into a couple of short components. I think, you know, if I look back at my life, even back to my teenage and adolescent years, I think I've always had an unhealthy sense of anxiety, you know, like maybe couple that in with a bit of OCD, you know. I had to make sure my shoes were freshly polished. I always had the perfect Windsor night, freshly pressed shirt, you know, belt in the middle of the pants, and then the hair had to be perfect. Before I left the house. Thanks, it was a good hair day today. But it had to be perfect before I left the house, you know. All of these things needed to be all lined up. And it's funny because, you know, you form a good bunch of mates when you go to school, but I went to an all-boys school. And so, you know, it was kind of survival of the fittest. Who could hurl the most shit at everybody, and the person who survived was either the person hurling or the person who could run away the quickest. And, you know, as much as I worried about how my hair looked, you know, as an adolescent boy, I didn't have hair in the right spots, or I had, you know, too much hair on my knees, and so I ended up with all of these probably pretty accurate, but pretty cruel nicknames from school. And so I think there's always been an unhealthy sense of anxiety. Roll the clock forward, pre-2000, I'm working in financial markets, and I'd get into work early, about 7:30, check out what's going in the overnight markets, review my portfolio, what do my clients need today, go to my sales meetings, my economic briefings, and 9:30 I'll be ready to go for market to open. But 9:30 every day, for me, I had to rush off into the men's room, strap myself in to the cubicle and hold myself there to write out what was my first panic attack for the day. And so I was having regular panic attacks. Wow. So I think the anxiety kind of morphed into panic attacks. The panic attacks I had all throughout my kind of 20s and early 30s, and that later turned into depression because I kind of put my head in the sand. I did what I'd observed everybody else in my family, my grandfather and my father do, just work hard, dig deep, bury it so that I don't have to deal with it or burden anybody else. And I didn't get professional help at that stage. So, I ended up sort of transitioning through, anxiety and panic attacks and depression, and I still struggle with some of those things, right? Like I still have to get help, and I've still got to employ the tools to help manage those things just to get through certain circumstances in my life. But professional help I think was the key for me. When I, in 2016, was going through separation, fast track to divorce, I didn't have any mates I could talk to, the ones that were teasing me about the hair on my knees at school. Not those guys. I did have other mates in my life, but they weren't the kind of guys I could talk to about this stuff. So I reached out to women because they were easy to talk to, they were non-threatening, they provided really good counsel, thought-provoking questions, and the conversations had meaning, and they encouraged me to develop well-being checklists, right? They were giving me information, not solutions, to go and, start to think about how I improve things for myself. But then I started down here running on a beach with a mate, sharing my challenges, and we realised that, running up and down the beach was physically good for us.
Yeah.
But was also emotionally, mentally good for us as well. We were getting shit off our chest, feeling better as a result, and able to kind of help each other navigate some of those challenges. So, to answer your question, it's a long response. I warned you about that.
That's right.
There's lots of things, right? Burying my head in the sand didn't work. Burying my head in work didn't work. I had to get professional help, but then I also needed other support networks. To bring women in. I later evolved, relationships with men. I took the best of the parts of the conversations that I was having with women and started to have those conversations with guys. And it was scary, right? Like, kind of being vulnerable with other blokes is hard to do. And then obviously, intentionally went about making sure that we could have those more meaningful conversations. And so, that's probably become... It's part of my... You talk about purpose. In addition to the work I do in the charity, I actually want to develop something specifically which tackles this issue, getting blokes talking. But to answer your question, it's lots of different things, and it's been different pieces of the puzzle over time, and they all kind of fit together now to form a different picture, which is me being hopefully a better person and mentally and emotionally more, I'm going to say well. Yeah. But those tools I have to think about, utilise and manage every day of the week. So yeah.
That's an awesome bit of information. I think the reason I wanted to bring that up was maybe someone's watching this and they're going, I feel like I'm in the same boat as Tim or in the same boat as Lorenzo, and what can I do? And that's the reason. But thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah,
just to okay, so let's just talk about mongrelsmen for a second. How can we contribute to the charity? Not me, but everyone else watching. What can we do maybe for your charity, but what would you say to people who want to get involved or also want to just help their mate that might not know what to do?
Yeah. So I mentioned before, we've now got 13 locations across New South Wales and Queensland. We're always looking for people to jump in, help out, volunteer. you know, our goal is to have a community champion in every postcode running events and activities for blokes. So they've got, you know, somewhere to go, something to do, someone to talk to, and the support when they need it. So we're always looking for volunteers to run those events and activities for us. And essentially it's, you know, an hour to two every week. We also run other events and programs. So, you know, people helping us organise those. We're a startup charity, only a couple of years old. So, you know, we're always looking for hands to help us. It could be anything from comms to marketing to PR to, you know, doing some admin for us. Because running a charity, there's a lot of compliance, a lot of governance.
Yep.
And you want to remain core to focus. We're always looking for, obviously, financial support. So, you know, go to the website, mongrelsmen.com, donate, buy some merch, wear the merch proudly, help us improve awareness.
Yep.
But I think at its most basic, like we talk about conversations.
Yep.
So, you know, help us with awareness, have conversations with others, and, you know, hopefully in some way we can help others, whether it's through our community meetups, our doghouse program, or our workshops.
That's awesome. I'll put the link to the Instagram and the website in the description below. So if you ever want to donate or buy some merch, it'll just be in the link below. To wrap it up, that was it. I wrote the same thing on 2 pages.
Perfect. You could have saved one of the...
I could have saved for next time. That's all right. I've got a big block. No, it just says thank Tim. So I just wanted to thank you for coming down. This is obviously, especially men's mental health for me, is because I work with sometimes 100 different men a week, is really important to me. And I just wanted to really thank you for coming down and sharing some stuff that I didn't know about, and I definitely know that everyone didn't really know about. And hopefully we can, moving forward, get you guys to get more than 13 locations, and also just get people talking about men.
Mate, thank you for doing what you're doing and opening up a conversation.
Definitely.
And keep it going. I appreciate it.
Thank
Love
you.
the work.
And
I love it.
You'll have to jump in my chair one day. Sorry, Ron, if you're watching.
We'll do it when he's on holidays.
Yeah. So he's not hurt. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.
You're the
I
man.
really appreciate it.
No, I really appreciate you. Thank you.